Welcome to the Just Business Podcast. Today I'm coming to you guys on my own. I don't have any guests to interview this week, but I thought that it would be a good opportunity to kind of go through some of my personal backstory for those who are interested and explain a little bit about my business too. Um, I know I don't really like doing this style of podcast. I think like a solo podcast is kind of boring to listen to, and it's less of a conversation. Like the thing that I like about podcasts with just two people sitting down and talking is that it feels more like a conversation, and that you as the listener, or the person whoever's viewing this can just kind of sit down and feel like they're being a part of something, whereas like this kind of just feels like I'm talking at a camera, which, sorry to take you out of it, I am right now. There's nobody there's nobody here, so this is kind of weird. um but nonetheless, I do think this is a good opportunity. We've talked about in the last episode specifically, we talked about, taking times like this where, maybe a scheduling conflict comes up and you don't have a guest, taking this and flipping this, turning this into an opportunity, and not letting these things become obstacles. So I think this is the perfect embodiment of that. And it's kind of what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is just do what I can in the moment, and obviously tell you guys a little bit about my business too. So for those of you who don't know, I am the owner of M3 Merch. I started the company 2 years ago, 2021, about March of 2021. And just starting out, it was just kind of an interesting story, because it's not really as similar as stories such as like Chris's or some of the other people that I've interviewed so far. Um, I've more so taken a little bit more of a traditional route in business for how I started my company, and I mean this in this way. So we talked about in the last episode, Chris starting the tattoo shop and starting Undiscovered Realm. Those were two things that he was passionate about, and yes, there were business factors in the sense that he saw a problem in this industry and sought out to fix it and create a better, more innovative solution to that problem in the tattoo industry and in the collectibles industry. So yes, he did solve those problems, but he had a passion for those businesses first. And if I'm being 100% transparent with you guys, I never really had a passion for making shirts or clothing, in general. So getting into the apparel production industry was kind of I took a different approach. And this is kind of how that started. So, prior, I'll go back. I need to, before I like kind of explain any further into like my creation of my business, I do kind of want to go back a little bit into around the time of 2019. So, you know, obviously we didn't know what was coming in the years before, but 2019, I was just graduated high school. I was just getting into college. Um, and originally I thought going into college that I would be, I knew I wanted to do something related to business, but I didn't know exactly what that was. I had previously, like throughout high school, I had worked here and there for Chris at Undiscovered Realm. I would help him occasionally with conventions, and I had some of my own little side hustles, just like flipping pops on eBay, or I used to go to garage sales and just pick up items and sell those on eBay, just mark them up. So I always kind of had like this business sense about me, and this internal desire to be a business person, and I loved selling things and keeping track of all of that, and for some reason it was something that I was passionate about. But I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in business going into college. I just knew that, like, in general, I want to be a part of something business related. And I think even at a certain time, I was under the impression that I was going to be a corporate lawyer, which, like, looking back at it now, I'm just like, why would you want to do that? Not no hate to any corporate lawyers out there, but it's just not like, given my perspective now, it's not something that I think I would be interested in. So I'm happy that, things kind of worked out the way that they did. But anyway, going into 2019, I was going into school. Um, I had moved closer. I was originally up in upstate New York, or further upstate, about an hour in Pauling, and I had moved down to Westchester so that I could go to school in the city. I went to Baruch College in Manhattan. And I also I started working more. I started working more for Chris at Undiscovered Realm. And I would do that. That was basically all I did. I would go to school, and then I would, go work for Chris if there was work to do. And I did that for a while. And then obviously, uh, 2020 hit. Um, and that kind of changed the landscape of things in a major way for everybody, but I think also for me, just in terms of my perspective and the things that I saw happening. It kind of changed the way that I was thinking about things too. It actually kind of opened up a door for me in a sense, I think, because I was able to take my classes online. So this is actually a pretty important part of this story. I was able to take my classes online, obviously, because we couldn't go in person. And what that allowed me to do was go to school in the morning. I packed all my classes up into the morning, and I would wake up at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. whenever the classes started. I would do all my schoolwork in the morning, and then I would go work from like 12 in the afternoon until like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, um, at Undiscovered Realm, and I would just do that. So having that opportunity to take classes online kind of allowed me to work more at the store with Chris. And I think the reason that that's so important is because I was then even further exposed to the inner workings of his business, and I got to see him operate more on a day-to-day basis, and I got more exposed to the world of small business ownership and entrepreneurship. And that is kind of, I think, when my brain took like this pivotal switch, in terms of like what my goals were, and what I was setting out to do. So going into that, I I was working more, started doing that, and eventually, the pandemic started to not end, but it started to loosen up. People were able to go out more, and there was also simultaneously there was an opening at the tattoo shop for the receptionist job, the front desk person, and I saw the opportunity there, and I was like, hey, let me maybe do that for a variety of reasons too, because while working at Undiscovered Realm was great, I think the hours were a little bit um, more demanding, and the work obviously was more of like a physical job in a lot of ways. Moving boxes around and shipping things, and basically just packing, picking, shipping, moving boxes, moving inventory. Um, and overall, it was just more demanding because of the time that was required to be there. So when I heard that, Chris was looking for somebody to work the front at the tattoo shop, I had decided that, hey, maybe that would be a good idea. Obviously, I think I'm pretty strong in the customer service field. I love talking to customers and helping people out, and also at the time I was starting to get more into tattoos and getting tattooed. So I thought, hey, that would be a really cool job to have. So, I made that transition. Luckily, Chris was very helpful and very willing to let me kind of move away from Undiscovered Realm and work for his other business. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened. I worked there for a while, and working there kind of opened up another thing in my brain, right? So originally I'd mentioned I never really was into like fashion or design of clothing, right? But working at the tattoo shop kind of opened up this other creative element in my brain that was not previously there. So I think being around artists and seeing them, create tattoos day in and day out, and seeing them draw and create other things for themselves, it opened me up to this other world of art and creativity that I did find interesting, something that previously I really had no interest in. Like I took some art classes, in college and in high school, but I never really, cared about that. So this is around the time of like 2020, end of 2020, beginning of 2021, um, where I was working at a tattoo shop. So I got to experience some more of the creative side of things. Obviously, it wasn't so much business focused. I mean, obviously, I was working for a small business, but many of the day to day things that I was doing was more so related to keeping the shop open, keeping the shop operating. Like calling walk-ins, having people send over emails, sending emails to people for to schedule appointments with the artists and things of that nature. So, so having that experience really showed me a different side of things, and another aspect of the art world that I wasn't really as experienced with was the the merchandising aspect of it. Like a lot of these artists, while primarily they are tattoo artists, they are very entrepreneurial and they are looking for other ways to essentially distribute their artwork. And one of the ways that many artists do that is through merch, whether it be through stickers or t-shirts or pins or what have you. Right? There's many different things that people create. You can take an image, you can basically take an image and put it on a bunch of different mediums. Some of the artists at the shop were at the time and even before I got there were doing things like creating these wood cutting um, pieces where they were essentially it was like a cross section of wood where they would draw or paint on it, and they would create these beautiful pieces on the wood, kind of like little wall hangings. And that was super interesting to me because it's super cool to see them take a creative ability and kind of transform it into these different mediums, from tattoo to physical media of a painting or a wood cutting, or even translating it onto something else like a shirt or a pin, right? So working at the tattoo shop kind of exposed me more so to the creative side of things. And it did, in a sense, pique my interest, right? But more so than that, right? It really showed me a new opportunity. As I talked about at the beginning of the show, um, you kind of have to look at these things, right? You're seeing all of these things that are happening around you, and sometimes an opportunity will present itself, and you have to take it. And sometimes you'll be forced to create an opportunity, and you have to do that too. But the opportunity did end up presenting itself, right? Eventually, Chris moved the shop from one location to a larger location in White Plains, and I saw the opportunity for an expansion, right? So all of these artists were creating, these handmade things, but I saw an opportunity for them to create more merch. And it gave me this idea. I said, what if I could help by creating a company that could make them shirts and make them hoodies and all of these other things that they could sell, right? And that's kind of what I did. Then that was the birth of M3 Merch in a sense. Before I did anything, I did a lot of research, and I think that's important to emphasize too. It wasn't just like, obviously, it's very easy to kind of simplify the order of and the way in which these things happened, but it was a very long process. It took months of planning and kind of hours of just looking up different machines, different processes for creating shirts. Obviously, there's a million different ways you can create a t-shirt, right? You have traditional methods such as screen printing. You have what I use today, which is referred to as direct to garment printing. And then you have a whole bunch of other things in between: sublimation, direct to film. You have embroidery for some people, right? So there are all these options, and I sat down for weeks and weeks and weeks and looked up different ways in which you could essentially create t-shirts, right? Because that was my primary goal at the beginning, because Chris had mentioned that he wanted to make t-shirts for Undiscovered Realm, and the artists wanted to make t-shirts for their own personal merchandise, and Chris at the time had an apparel company, which I think he has since kind of kept the designs, but there's a whole other side. That's a whole nother story for another time. But anyway, people wanted shirts. I basically said, all right, let's go to work. Let me figure out how I'm going to do this. I looked up hours of YouTube videos of people using different methods, people using different equipment. I called different companies trying to get information regarding, pricing and the specs on their equipment. And ultimately, what had happened was I ended up reaching out to this company called Equipment Zone in New Jersey. And they were very helpful. And they were ultimately the people who sold me my machine. And I still buy supplies from them regularly. But I ended up calling them, and I had basically decided after a while that direct to garment was going to be the method that I wanted to use for a multitude of reasons. Because it allowed me to kind of print one-off images, in a sense that, so kind of just a little bit of the technical side of things. In screen printing, you have to make a screen for every color that you want to print. So let's say you had a shirt such as the shirt that I'm wearing right now. It's pretty plain, right? But let's say I wanted to screen print this little NASA logo here, right? It's red and it's white. So you would need to make two screens, one for red ink and one for white ink, and you essentially pull the ink through the screen onto the shirt, and you push ink onto the shirt in that pattern. But what happens with that process is that you need to make those screens, and it's time consuming to burn a screen and create that. So it's not really a method that's efficient for people who want to create just a few shirts. And typically most people who do screen printing have a minimum order quantity of 50 or sometimes 100 or more. So I picked direct to garment because it gave me the opportunity to essentially print just one shirt if I wanted to, and that allowed me to kind of serve the market that I was looking to serve, which was artists who weren't necessarily looking to buy 100 of every design. They just wanted to, make a design, put it online, and if a couple people buy it, they wanted to make a few shirts. So that's the market I was looking to serve, and direct to garment was the method that I ultimately determined was going to be the best for my customers. So I was talking to Equipment Zone. We had a few meetings. At the time, it was through Zoom because there were still some COVID restrictions and they weren't doing in-person meetings. But they were very helpful. They walked me through the process of what equipment I would need, and we talked prices, and I had them send me samples through the mail of printed t-shirts. Even they were nice enough to even print the shirts that with our designs on them, so we could see what our designs looked like on them. And after a long process of months of research and talking to people and getting samples, and then Chris and I going back and forth with financing and getting financing for it, we were able to make it happen. And we got the machine, we got the equipment for the for everything. It was the printer, you needed a heat press, and you needed a pre-treatment machine. And that's what we did. So we finally got everything. I went and I picked it up myself from their warehouse in New Jersey, and I brought it back. And again, I can't emphasize enough too the fact that like none of this would have really been possible without Chris and his help, because aside from just helping me get like the financing for it, he also gave me a spot to house the printer in his shop. Like I mentioned, them moving to a larger location in White Plains was really what allowed me to kind of start thinking about this more seriously. And it gave me the opportunity to use some of their space, some of the space in that shop to print out of. And I think that's an important thing to recognize too, because I mentioned it briefly when I was talking to Dave in the first episode, but it's important to realize like you have especially in business and in small business, when you're doing something and you're starting off somewhat on your own, you're never really on your own. I find it very hard to believe when I see people online that make these claims like I started my business all by myself. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I started from nothing, and and I'm self-made, and I find it so hard to believe, and I'm very skeptical about those types of people, because ultimately what those what those people I think fail to recognize is that there's many people that help you along the way. And if they're denying that, I think they're lying too. That's the other thing. Because people don't do things on like solely on their own. There's nobody that like you couldn't just spawn into this world and with no clothes and no house and no money and just somehow just make it. That's not really how this works, right? Like everybody's gotten help from somebody, whether it's a parent, even if they're not giving you money, if they're just letting you stay at their house, just having a shelter that you don't have to pay for, or just having a home that you can operate out of and you're secure in that sense. Like these are the ways in which I think a lot of those people who make those claims are failing to recognize their own ways in which they've been helped greatly by other people. But aside from that, anyway, I was getting a little bit off track there. So we got the equipment, and again, thank you to Chris for helping me so far with everything. We got the equipment. We got the equipment. We put it in, and yeah, I mean, I just started printing. I made my own logo. Like even the logo that I have today, the little blue logo with the shirt and the M3, I made that myself in Photoshop. And it's not a crazy complex logo, but it's simple enough and it gets the job done. I made my own logo. I started branding myself. I started Instagram, and primarily that was how I operated for a long time. Like just posting up my stuff on Instagram and having people reshare it and getting orders through DMs and basically fulfilling everything manually. And that's really how, in a sense, that's kind of how you have to start for many people. Like you're not going to have a crazy budget where you can, put a ton of money into like advertising and things like that. So having the tools of social media are important, you know, having that ability to kind of just post up your stuff and have the people that support you, that's so important. And that's another way too that I think people really fail to recognize when they say I'm self-made. It's like, well, are you self-made? Because if you have family or friends or anybody who reposted your business online, who shared it, who referred somebody to you, who gave you business in that way, like you have to really recognize and be grateful for those people in your life that have helped you, because like I said, nobody's self-made. Those are all things that are very important, especially when you're starting out. You might not recognize it at first, but those are the things that get your business started in the first place. Just having those people in your life or online or whoever that are willing to share your business and support you in that way. Even if it's not financial, even if it's literally just reposting something, like that is support. That is somebody helping you. And I'm not saying like you owe them everything, right? Because you can still put in a ton of work, and that doesn't take away from the work that you put in. But it's also to say at the same time that these people are very helpful, and it's important to recognize the people that have helped you so far, because you can't walk around with that mindset that you have been essentially self-made, or that you are somehow, I guess, better than other people. It's not good for your own mental health, and it's also not good for the people around you. Like people just won't people won't like you if you're going around telling other people that you're some sort of guru or self-made guy. I'm very skeptical of those people, if you couldn't tell. But yeah, so we started printing stuff. I started doing everything through social media and through Instagram. Um, and for, I would say, the first year and a half, most of my business was done just on Instagram, and I would take sticky notes and I would write down orders that way, and I would do orders like that. And I would also emphasize this too, because the first year and a half, I would literally go. I was still in school at the time too, and school had started like yeah, end of or beginning of 2021. School had started going back in person again, so I was going commuting into the city, coming back upstate, coming back up to Westchester, going to White Plains, going to work, right? So I was doing these things. I would get up, I'd be up at like 8 a.m. and I would not finish working some nights until like 12, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, right? And then you go to sleep. You sleep for a few hours and you continue that cycle. So that was something that I think is also important to emphasize, right? Like the amount of hours that you put in won't be matched, right? I'm I would say for most businesses, like there's probably a direct correlation with how many meaningful hours you put into your business and how successful it is, right? For the people who think that you're just going to start a business and oh, like I'll put in a couple hours here, I'll put in a couple hours there, like that's not how it works. You have to put in the time, you have to put in the research, and you have to actually execute. And part of executing is literally just putting in hours, right? I didn't have any employees. I didn't have any uh, partners in this. Like, obviously, like I said, Chris helped me set up the business, but he is not technically a part of it in that sense. So all of the responsibilities of the business were on me, from making sure I was staying up to date with customers to printing the orders to shipping the orders and everything in between, marketing, etc. So I put in a lot of hours to the first year and a half, and even today, like up until this point, like currently, I was at the shop 2 nights ago until 2 in the morning. I got there. I was working at home earlier in the morning from like 9, 10 a.m. and then I got to the shop at 12, and I didn't leave the shop until literally like 1 in the morning, I think. Um, but sometimes that's what you have to do. Like there is no substitute for hard work and for just putting in the hours and getting things done. And going back to what I was saying originally, when I first started the business and I was running things through Instagram and just doing things on sticky notes, right? Like those were the times where I still acknowledged the idea that like this is the beginning, but it's also important to continue to progress, right? So eventually I realized like it's not it's not good to keep writing stuff on sticky notes, not because I was losing orders or forgetting things, but because it's not as easy to track things. Like even something at the end of the year with like taxes or something like that, right? Then you have to go back and you have to manually count all of this stuff, opposed to if I just use an Excel sheet, or now what I use is Shopify, because they keep the numbers they keep track of the numbers pretty well. But being able to use those tools allows me to optimize my business now. So when you start a business, you're basically just like trying to run it just whatever it takes. I'm just putting in the hours. I'm working as hard as I can. And then slowly what you want to do is you want to start to optimize it over time, right? You put in those systems, you make adjustments to the way that you're operating and the systems that you're using. And if you have employees, you're creating new systems to make sure that they're operating efficiently so that you can ultimately continue to optimize that business. So I continued to do that. I eventually moved away from like sticky notes and things like that. And like I mentioned, using online systems and electronic systems to keep track of sales and to, to keep track of customers and do all my numbers like that. And now, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, I guess. So that was from the start of it in the beginning of 2021. So around March of 2021, when I started it, I've now progressed to the point where I, for the most part, have pretty consistent sales. There's obviously still massive room for growth, and I'm nowhere near like where I would like to be in terms of my vision for what I want the company to be. But in terms of like from where we've started, we have experienced some of that growth. Um, and it's been amazing to see in that sense. I mean, I have some of the questions that I usually ask people here, and I always ask, like what are your current business goals? I think if anybody has listened to the other episodes, I've always asked everybody like what are their goals in business. And for me, being able to offer new products such as stickers, such as embroidery for hats and things of that nature, for patches, I would love to be able to offer sublimation for things like mugs and other, ceramic accessories and tumblers and things like that. So I still have like a lot of goals and a lot of things I would like to do with the company. Some of them, which for one reason or another, I don't want to share publicly just yet because I like to kind of plan things out a little bit beforehand. But I have some of these goals, and with that, I continue to work on those, right? And my biggest piece of advice for people who are running a business or, just people in general, like this, honestly, this advice I think kind of goes to anybody, whether you run a business or you don't run a business. You can benefit from just having radical accountability. Like this is a concept that I've thought about so much recently, and just for a long time I've thought about this, just this idea of radical accountability. You need to be almost overly responsible for your actions. Obviously there are some things that are out of your control and you can't control, because they're just bigger than you, or it's something that you could have never foreseen happening. But the idea and the way that I've thought about it so far is like this idea of radical accountability is really about saying, like, no matter what happened or what the actual reason for that happening is going to be, you have to take it upon yourself to go, well, I'm going to control this situation as best as I can in this moment, and I'm going to do what I can do to basically create the best outcome for myself. You might not be able to do everything, or you might not be able to do anything to actually affect the situation, but you have to believe that you can control it in one way or another. Because if you're not going to, then at that point, you've basically kind of just given up on the situation. And now you are at the mercy of whatever this external factor is. If I, when I, for here's a little story about, M3 merch in probably about, I want to say a little over a year ago. I had the printer and everything. We were set up, and I had like the little print shop area under the tattoo shop. A pipe burst. A pipe burst under the tattoo shop. It was an old pipe. Nobody could have ever seen it coming, and it just started to come down, spill down, and it kind of flooded things, right? But I did what I can do, and because of that, I was able to control the situation in the best way possible and be able to kind of fix the things that I could fix, right? If I had done nothing, if I had just stayed home and I go, oh, well, I'm screwed. I guess my printer's ruined, and all of the stuff that was in that area has gotten wet and it's water damaged, and there's nothing I can do, right? If I had just done that, that's not good for my mental health, because now you're just in like this helpless feeling, but also it's not productive for my business. Like I did what I could do to fix the things I could fix. I saved a few hoodies. Which might not seem like a lot, but it's a couple $100 in product that I probably saved, and a couple $100 in materials that I was able to salvage that otherwise, if I just left there, would have been damaged, right? So my whole point in all of this is, and this is probably an idea that I will expand upon in the future because it's something that I think about a lot. But my whole point of all of this is just like, if you're going to be a business owner, you need to be radically accountable for yourself and for your business. You need to live and die by your successes and your failures. And you need to run under the assumption and under the condition that whatever happens, it is because of you. If you succeed, it is because of you. And if you fail, it's because of you. And if you do that, those are things that will help you progress, right? So like I was saying, when I saved a couple $100 in products, like that was crucial. I wasn't making a ton of money, and I'm still not making a ton of money printing shirts. So just saving those few $100 in materials was crucial to my business. It is something that helped me greatly. And, looking back at it now, it's like yeah, that was the right move, and those are the things that I needed to do. So if anybody is still listening to this for whatever reason, this rambling or whatever I'm doing at this point, I think it's an important concept to listen to understand, and it's something that is crucial for business owners, and it's something that I will expand upon further. It's something that I haven't even fully grasped the concept of myself, because I think that there's so much that goes into this idea. Another thing I wanted to talk about, which is actually something I I had mentioned in the first few podcasts, was this idea of hustle culture, and I think I wanted to expand on that a little bit more. Um, just because I never really, like, obviously when you're talking to somebody, especially interviewing a guest, like, you don't really get to explain some of your thought process for why you wanted to talk about that. Um, but I just want to talk about this briefly, just to kind of address some of the things that I've seen, both positive and negative, surrounding this whole like social media movement. And I guess first, just to define it for people who haven't heard the other episodes or are unsure what I'm talking about, like there's been this recent uh, kind of trend for a lot of influencers, especially people, like in the business realm, these people who will go online and garner this social media presence, and they claim to be like, I'm a business guru, or I'm a multimillionaire successful businessman, I'm a lifestyle coach, or I'm a whatever, right? They claim to have like mastered the either life itself or the art of business or the ability to make money, and they're essentially peddling this off to what would be people who haven't quote unquote mastered this. And I think for in many ways the things that they're saying are not all wrong, but they're totally misrepresented in this way. And I mean it in this way. Let me use like the example of like an Andrew Tate or something, for example. Like he's not a positive person to look up to. Like for many people, if anybody's listening to this and you've like looked up to like an Andrew Tate type or anybody like that, right? These people, he's a guy, right? I don't know his whole history. I don't know how he gained money or attention, but you can see like obviously this guy has been trying to gain attention for a while. He was on like that Big Brother show or whatever, right? A reality TV show. Um, I believe his dad was, very well known chess player or something like that, right? So this guy obviously wanted attention, and you're gonna get it however you want. And in some sense, he's kind of gained attention by being controversial and saying controversial things and whatnot, right? And he has, I'm 100% free speech. He has the right to say whatever he wants to say, but also like this is the rebuttal right here. The idea he A lot of the times these people will take a very reasonable idea, such as like you should have self-discipline. Like yes, that's a very reasonable idea. You should be very disciplined and how you know maintain your life and how you operate, right? Like there's positive aspects to staying physically and mentally healthy, going to the gym, practicing meditation if that's something that you find helpful. There's good things encapsulated within that concept of like discipline and being able to um, kind of control yourself in a certain sense, right? But they'll take that and then they'll conflate it with a whole bunch of other ideas that are very extreme, and they know, I think in a lot of senses they're just saying things um, because they know that's how you gain social media attention, right? Like this podcast specifically, like for whatever reasons, for better or worse, right? Like we're not. I don't think I've really said anything too controversial as of yet um, on this podcast, and because I don't think I'm that controversial of a person, honestly. But for other reasons, is I'm not trying to gain attention through outrage, which is often what these people do. And essentially, what it has created is this kind of culture of extreme extreme hustle, or whatever you want to call it, right? This hustle culture. And I think it's negative for this reason, right? and this is the primary reason for this. People should have a balanced life, right? You should be very passionate about the things that you do. But with that, you should have multiple things that are a part of your life. I used to believe very much so in this idea of you just, if you work and you grind, and I'm just going to keep, saving up my money, and I'm going to stack my money and blah blah blah, and I'm going to be super successful, and then everything else will come, right? And that's not necessarily how that works, because you can be an amazing business person and you can be a millionaire and have all the money in the world, right? But there's other parts to that that won't make you happy anymore, right? You could be a very successful business person, but if you don't have the skills to maintain a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a personal relationship with friends or family, right? If you don't have that ability, you're going to have a piece of your life that's missing. And I've seen other people make this mistake where they've, to a fault, been very motivated, but not capable of seeing that this idea of like, you need to be balanced. You need to put in just as much time as you're putting in for your business. You need to put into your family. You need to put into your friends and your personal relationships outside of work, because ultimately, like, you need all of those things, right? If you're just a person, and it goes the other way too, if you're just a person who's constantly like, I'm just hanging out with my friends having a good old time, right? And you never fulfill professional goals or have a career, and you're never financially stable, it's like you're constantly going to be stressed about money, and you're constantly going to be mentally or emotionally ill in that sense of, because you have not fulfilled or satisfied that part of your life. And I don't know. I think for the little audience that I do have, if I could share one message, it's just to have a balanced life and to be passionate about multiple things in life. Don't double down on one thing just because you think you're good at it, or because you think that's going to give you the most satisfaction. Try new things, right? Be very good and try to be a well-rounded person, because at the end of the day, you can hustle all you want, but if you're sitting alone in your mansion, then you're fucked. There's millionaires every day. Not maybe not every day, but there's millionaires frequently that kill themselves. There's millionaires and billionaires that I'm sure have unspoken mental illness that is not really talked about. And those are the parts of the hustle culture that I would like to warn against, right? Because, like I said before, there's nothing wrong with discipline. I go to the gym almost every day, if not every day, throughout the week. I try to at least an hour, if not more, in the gym every day. That's my personal goal. That's what I like to do, right? And it's not to say it's what you need to do, but that's what I like to do, right? So I believe in self discipline. I believe in working extremely hard. Like I mentioned previously, you you have to work hard in business to succeed, right? You need to put in hours, and you need to um, be dedicated to what you're doing. But you also need to save time to work on other things, to be a well rounded person, to foster relationships in your life, to experience new things that are going to pique your interest or continue to make you grow as a person past just financial responsibilities and past just like physical, aesthetic looks and material items. Like, these are not the things that are going to make you happy. You need to have multiple things in life, because to a certain extent, I think happiness is something that, regardless of where you find it from, if you only have it from one source, eventually you will either become tired of that, or it will lose the intensity of happiness that you once had for it. For many people who started a company, right? If that's all they did and all you did your whole life was start a company, um, eventually one day, I truly believe, like, if that's all you have, you won't find the same joy in it. You need to have new things. And people I think the way that we were designed is to experience new things and continuing to grow and try new things, and taking that opportunity to taking the opportunities to try new things is important. And that's been my point this whole time, right? When I bring up in the previous episodes, when I brought up in the previous episodes that people, when I ask what's your thoughts on hustle culture, it's because I think it's important to show people that there's more to life than just constantly working. You need to work, right? Some people, you'll find a great deal of joy and satisfaction and personal achievement in your professional life. And that's great because, I think to a certain extent I'm like that. But I also recognize the need to try new things. I love going hiking. I love watching baseball and hanging out with my friends and family and all of that. And I have other personal goals that I would like to achieve in my life that are not business related. And yeah, those are the things that a lot of these business gurus and these experts are not telling you because they don't give a shit. They don't really care about you. They're trying to sell a course and they're trying to make money off of you, and that's why that message I think is somewhat negative in a sense, right? Anytime somebody is giving you information with the hopes that you purchase something from them, you have to be skeptical of the information that you're getting. You just have to be. It's not to say that they're always going to be lying, but there is a certain sense where you have to realize that people people are going to tell you what they think they need to tell you in order to get you to do what they want you to do, right? It's almost, I don't want to say it's manipulative, but in a sense it is. Like if somebody is selling a course and they're telling you that you're a loser because, you're a part of the matrix, or you just have a 9 to 5 job. It's like, so what if somebody has a 9 to 5 job and they make 60,000 a year and they're happy and they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife or whatever, and they're happy with their life and they spend time with their family and they achieve things, they have personal hobbies that they do, like who gives a shit? Not everybody needs to do this. Like for the people who listen to this thinking about starting a business, I think it's the greatest thing in the world for me, but I don't try to tell everybody that that's going to be the case, because for many people it's like you might try this and you'll go, this fucking sucks. I work 80 to 100 hours a week, whatever, and I make literally almost nothing at the end of the day, especially if you're starting off in a new business. You probably won't make a single dime for like 3 years, if not longer, or most likely not for the first year. But people will say, people might say that, oh, this sucks. This isn't for me. And I would agree. This is not for everybody. This is for people who want to do it and they want that flexibility in their life at a certain point, and they're willing to sacrifice these things, right? But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that it is a sacrifice, and you take that and you also try to balance it out by doing other things. So, and if I, again, trying to distill this down into one message, it's just the idea of hustle culture, the idea of people needing to work until they physically can't anymore, or the idea that if you're not making, like I think I saw, what was it, like Grant Cardone or something? It was like, if you're not making 100,000 a month, you should be embarrassed. And like I know that there's like context to that clip where he was talking to like a group of millionaires already or whatever, but regardless, right? These generalizations, the things that people talk about, they don't matter. You need to assess your life, assess the things that make you happy, assess the things that make you unhappy, and work hard and have that accountability, like I talked about. Have that radical accountability to make the change in your life, to go on to fix the things that you find are bringing you unhappiness, and to amplify the things that bring you happiness, and to ensure that you're constantly adapting in life to make sure that you're happy and fulfilled and financially stable and emotionally secure and Doing those things. Those are the positive things. Fuck these online courses where these people are trying to tell you, I'm gonna tell you how to make $1 million a month trading crypto. Fuck crypto. How about that? It's like, you know, who said you need to make $1 million a month? Or $100,000 a month, or 10,000 a month, or whatever you think you're making, you're not making it. First of all, you're not making it. These people are fucking liars, right? Most of them are liars, if not all of them. Nobody has this magic key that's going to make you a millionaire overnight. Nobody has this magic key that's going to get you successful and make you happy, right? Like, that's on you. And if for people who are out there looking for other people to do that for them, no, fuck those people. You got to you got to look inward and identify the things that you need to change within yourself. And for the people who are selling their online Discord servers and their courses, fuck those people. Those aren't the things that are going to make you happy. Those aren't the things that are going to make you successful. You literally just need to focus on yourself. You need to work hard at the things that you enjoy and work hard to identify the things that you enjoy. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say in relation to hustle culture when people ask when I was asking people, what your thoughts are, because I wanted to show people that that's not the only way. And I guess I don't want to take up too much more time talking about this. I think, obviously this was never going to be like a full hour episode. Um, because I just don't think it's that interesting to listen to somebody for that long. I've probably been talking too long already. And at this point I can't even remember most of the stuff that I said. So yeah, I will probably leave it at this. For those of you who are still listening, thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Thank you very much to all of the people who are sharing this and getting the word out there about it. I hope it's bringing some sort of value for people, and I hope people are able to, whether it's entertainment value or something that's actually helping you in your business, or maybe something that motivates you to someday start a business. Like, those are my goals with this podcast. I want to share information and make owning a business more accessible to people. Like, those are my goals in life. I do want to help people start a business and be able to successfully run you know run a small business, or maybe even turn into a large business. Who knows? But again, thank you for listening. If you haven't already, please follow us on Instagram, Just Business Pod, at Just Business Pod. And so on YouTube, so please subscribe on YouTube, turn on that notification bell, and make sure you're following us on everything else. I think we're on TikTok as well at the moment, and hopefully I will be starting up the Facebook page soon. And then also, if you guys are interested in seeing more of my business, that's m3.merch on Instagram and everywhere else. And you can follow me on Instagram personally if you want to see even more of the behind the scenes of the things that I do and some of the stuff that I like. My Instagram is Jake Muller with 3 L's. So JakeMuller, all one word. So again, thank you for listening to the podcast. Please let us know what you think about it. Let us know what you want to see in the future in terms of guests or in terms of content. And we will love to hear from all of you and get that to you in the future. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.